have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name is Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org. to let us know your thoughts.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, we had our 2 days of spring. It is winter now again in Washington, D.C. Can somebody figure this weather out and get it straight? Good morning, everybody. Wednesday, April 16. Hello, 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 and good morning. Great to see you this morning. We are here in our nation's capital. Ain't nobody else around. Doesn't seem like it. House is gone. Senate's gone. Pretty quiet here in town. Most of the tourists are gone since the cherry blossoms have come and gone. And even President Obama's heading out of town today. He said, hell, it's too quiet in Washington. I'm going out to Pittsburgh to stir things up a little bit. But we are here, and from our perspective on Capitol Hill, we will help you find out what's going on this morning, what you ought to care about, and what you want to talk about. Here we go. The next 3 hours will bring you up to date on the news from Washington, from our nation's capital, from around the country, from around the globe, and then open up the phone calls and the social media and let you sound off. You know the way to do it. Your toll-free number, 866-55-PRESS. Use it. Give us a call. Get your point of view out on the air. Also, send us your comments on Twitter at PP Show and on Facebook at Bill Press Show. Facebook.com/Bill Press Show. There you go. We got it down, and we got the team here this morning in place, ready to go. Peter Ogburn and Lisa Murphy. Hello, hello.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Sir. I think we should tell everybody we're kind of limping along this morning, all right? Because they may find things. First of all, what things that are wrong with the studio?
Let's
now the clock has been wrong for like a week, and a lot of you are really freaked out because those of you listening on your local progressive talk radio station, but those of you watching on Free Speech TV, they will see over Peter's shoulder our clock, and the clock is wrong. We know it's wrong.
I know it's wrong.
Don't worry, and we're not on the wrong coast. You're not on the wrong coast. You're not in the wrong time zone.
We're playing an elaborate joke on everyone.
We're on our own time here at the Bill Press Show.
It just shows that when I look at this clock, I have to subtract every time I look at it. It's driving me crazy.
It's not hard enough to do a radio TV show. We have to make you do algebra in the middle of it.
So the clock is wrong, number one. Number two, this microphone doesn't work, okay? Now, this one I'm talking on does, but this damn thing over here doesn't. It's just hanging there.
It's on strike.
Just get rid
just
of
dressing. There you go. Get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way. So we're down to Peter's mic and my mic. Right? The other one doesn't work. And then Comcast is down this morning. But I mean, Comcast, we've already decided that it's the worst company in the world.
Well, we're normally professing our love for Comcast, right? It's such a great business, specifically for their customer service.
Yeah, the best.
Customer service is the best, right?
The best.
Lousiest, rated as one of the worst companies to work for, right? And we know from being customers of theirs, one of the worst companies to do business with. And now, seriously, they want this big merger with Time Warner. I mean, I'm going to call Al Franken today and say, Al, man, I'm on your side.
Yeah.
Don't let these guys get any. They already bought NBC last year.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
And now they're going to buy Time Warner. No. This is stop this bus. I want to get off.
This is a classic example of the dangers of having a company like Comcast becoming so big because there are no other options in this area. Like for right here, like we couldn't get internet service from anybody else and cable service from anybody else. This is all we got. We just have Comcast or bust.
Okay, so that's if we seem like we're in a lousy mood this morning. That's why. All right. But we're glad to be here with you on your local progressive talk radio station.
No other radio TV show is doing so much with so little.
We're glad to be here with you on Free Speech TV. Thank you for tuning in, and certainly glad to be here with you all the way in Belarus and the Ukraine and around the world on our video stream at youtube.com/TawkrTV. Pardon me. Alicia Cruz rounding out our team here. Standing by to take. I think the phones are working, which is a miracle.
Yes, the phones are working.
Right, phones are working. 866-55-PRESS. And so far, the cameras are working, and the lights are on, thanks to Cyprian Balding. And we'll just wait till the lights go out and the cameras go down. You know, what else can go wrong? I don't know. Yesterday, a very moving ceremony up in Boston. The first anniversary to the date of that horrific end to the Boston Marathon last year, the bombing which ended up with 3 people killed and a couple of dozen injured. and one of the bombers still sitting in jail waiting for his trial to start, where he could face the death sentence if found guilty. And I think no doubt they've got the goods on him. Yesterday, among the leading the, it was both a memorial service, sort of a commemoration and remembrance of the victims of last year's bombing, but also a celebration of Boston Strong. And that message was loud and clear from Vice President Joe Biden.
They figure if they instill enough fear, we will change. And it infuriates them that we refuse to bend, refuse to change, refuse to yield to fear. You are Boston strong, but America is strong.
We are America strong, Vice President Joe Biden yesterday up in Boston. So we've got a lot coming up today. David Jackson will be joining us from the White House, USA Today. Joe Romm from the Center for American Progress to talk about the latest UN report on climate change. And Chris Moody will be here as a friend of Bill, Chris Moody from Yahoo News. And Michael Bloomberg is back, and he's putting a lot of money on the table. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Bill, Jenna Bush Hager, daughter of George W. Bush, talked to The Hill last week and reported that as part of the first birthday for her daughter Mila, George W. Bush has painted a portrait of the granddaughter.
Oh, my God. This is going to be, from now on, every birthday, every anniversary, Christmas, it's going to be, you get
another
painting.
Portrait.
The new family heirloom.
She did say in the same interview that that George W. Bush had painted one right after the child was born.
Yeah.
But they don't want to put it up because the baby looks like a little old man in it. And George W. Bush has said he feels that he's grown over the past year as an artist, and he thinks that he could do a better version of what he gave her before.
Oh, I see.
So she hasn't seen it yet. I'm not sure that she's going to share it with the world, but I certainly hope that she does.
Okay. All right. Granddad. Get busy painting.
Good Morning America confirmed on Tuesday morning that Michael Strahan will be joining the show. The former NFL linebacker, current co-host of Live with Kelly Ripa, is going to be joining the show as a part-time correspondent.
Wow.
He's going to continue on with Live, but this is clearly a move that he's going to be joining the show in a bigger form later on in his career.
They're trying to get back.
Yeah.
Trying to take on both the Today Show and, actually, GMA has taken over it.
Yes, right? They have. Yeah.
Right.
And RIP-AC/DC, AC/DC is ending their career. 41 years as a rock band. They are calling it quits. Turns out their rhythm guitar player and founding member Malcolm Young is not well. He had a stroke. They're in the middle of working on another album, but they're just going to scrap it all.
They've been around that long?
They've been around for a very, very long time. They did, and they still tour. They did a big 40th anniversary tour last year, and they still pull in a lot of money from concerts. But they said they can't go on without Malcolm. He's a founding member. They're not going to even try and tour without him, so they're just going to call it quits.
Yeah, they'll wait a year. Then they'll do another reunion tour. That's
Don't be surprised when they show back.
The Rolling Stones are still.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Peter. Yes, indeed. Big news on the political front this morning, and I think it's good news on the political front. Michael Bloomberg, we haven't heard from him in a while since he stepped down as mayor of New York. He's been busy making his plans, and yesterday he announced them, reported in this morning's New York Times. Michael Bloomberg is plunking down $50 million. By the way, for him, that's really chump change, but it's a lot of money. It's a major statement. He put in, I think, $55 million in oceans last year, and this year it's $50 million. And what he wants to do with that $50 million, his ambition is to build a new grassroots organization. Get this, new grassroots organization to counter and to overturn and to beat the NRA. Sensible gun restrictions, sensible gun control, common sense solutions to gun violence have been Mayor Michael Bloomberg's passion. For years, he's put some money into political races, very successfully to elect candidates who would support common sense gun control measures. And so now he wants to do it from the grassroots up, building from the grassroots up. He's talking about, and Michael Bloomberg says that we have to learn from the NRA in the sense that you reward those politicians who support you, and you punish and go after those politicians who don't. Michael Bloomberg says, quote, here's what the NRA says. They say, we don't care. We're going to go after you. If you don't vote with us, we're going to go after your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids, and we're never going to stop. And Bloomberg says, that's what we've got to do. We've got to make them afraid of us. And his plan is, I'd love to know what you think about this 866-55 press. I got to tell you, I think it is long, long overdue. So here's the plan. The plan is that he's going to put together. There are groups out there right now on addressing the problem of gun violence. You know, you've got the Mayors for Sensible Gun Control, which is, I might not have the title exactly right, but that's Michael Bloomberg's one of his groups. There's a group we've had in studio a couple of times, Peter, the Moms
Against Guns.
Against Guns or something. Again, may not be the exact title of the group, but he's going to combine all these existing grassroots organizations, which have together 1.5 million members now. He's going to put them together in a new umbrella organization called Every Town for Gun Safety. Let me make sure I have that right. Every Town for Gun Safety. And the goal is to get 1 million more members in this first year. Yeah, Every Town for Gun Safety to recruit 1 million more members. And they're going to do it not by like running TV ads or running radio ads so much as building a grassroots organization, signing up new voters on this one issue and getting these new voters out to vote on this issue in every single election for the State House, for the Congress, for the U.S. Senate, and eventually for President of the United States. So that's the idea that, you know, these impassioned gun nuts that belong to the NRA, you know, there's nothing going to keep them home when it's come election time because that's their burning issue. Well, Michael Bloomberg says, let's build a group of people on the other side of this issue who feel the same passion and the same enthusiasm and the same determination to get out and vote every single election on this one issue. They're going to focus on 15 target states. And the one issue they're going to focus on, which is interesting because some of the things we've talked about, which I think makes sense, are the assault weapons ban, the background checks, the special personal locks that you can put on guns so that nobody else but you could fire it, a ban on those extra magazine clips or on extra purchases of ammunition. But this new group is going to focus on, to begin with at least, background checks. Background check for every purchase of every gun, which I think is the one issue in this whole area of how to deal with gun violence that has the most popular support. So again, Michael Bloomberg, he's stepping up. He is putting his money where his mouth is, $50 million to build a counter-offensive to the NRA. What do you think of this 866-55 press? I got to tell you, do you think it will work? I do. And I salute Michael Bloomberg. I've said a long time, these people, wealthy progressives, have to be willing to put their money on the table. They got to be willing, like the Koch brothers do, putting their money, like Rupert Murdoch does, putting their money behind right-wing causes. We need some proud progressives to put their money behind progressive causes. Michael Bloomberg has done so. And I got to say, I think it will work because there are more of us who want sensible gun control measures. There are more of us than there are of them who want to do nothing about gun violence in this country. More of us, more of them. So let's organize. Let's take them on under Michael Bloomberg's leadership. And let's talk about it here Wednesday morning at 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full-time. I mean, almost my story. But she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, let me know what you're going to do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory and my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, lawyer? I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure. Up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru, my mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You like my cooking? I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity, and one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him, because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
It is it is 26 minutes after the hour right now. I'm just laughing because all of our clocks are different here. Everything's screwed up in the studio. I don't know. I don't know what time it is. I don't know where I am.
We've been doing this show.
All right, it's Wednesday, April 16th. Is that right?
Apparently it's winter outside.
For almost 9 years. It's time that we made things a little harder.
Why? No, it's supposed to get easier.
But do we need to make it a challenge?
Easier, not harder. All right. Michael Bloomberg says, I'm going to put $50 million on the table to build a new grassroots organization. By the way, the NRA last year spent, just to put this in perspective, the NRA last year reported that they spent $20 million on political activity. So $50 million ought to make a difference. Peter?
We're on Twitter at BP Show, at BP Show. Just one quick comment, and it's a good one from our friend Leslie Gretsch in Asheville, North Carolina.
We love Leslie.
She's on Twitter at Buncumbian, from Buncumbian County down there in North Carolina. She says the U.S. gun violence epidemic is worse than any terrorism threat this country faces. It's about time.
Yeah, just look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. About time. Good for you, Leslie. Good to hear from you. Alex in Cape Coral, Florida. Hey, Alex.
Hi, Bill, and it's 6:26 a.m.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
On the East Coast, thank you.
You're welcome. I have to say, I make $10 an hour at my job. If I had $50 million, I would put myself into this fight. We've got to stop these senseless acts of violence. They make me cry every time I see it, Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there is something we can do, and I think this kind of leadership may be all that people need to really get motivated, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I think if Bloomberg, I would imagine, Alex, as part of this, he's going to ask people around the country to send in, what they can. If it's $5 or $10 or something to help out, he could probably raise another $50 million on top of that from grassroots.
For charity, so I understand that very well, Bill.
Yeah. All right. Alex, good for you down there. Got a big governor's race coming up, too. I'm sure you're right in the middle of that. We got a lot more calls. We got a lot more time here coming up here to talk about Mayor Bloomberg. He is sounding the call for a new grassroots organization to really get serious. Don't just bitch about it. Don't just cry about it. We all do that. But actually do something about sensible gun control by electing some politicians who will do the right thing.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say, slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, "Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about your next venture."
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, And this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Bill Press Show brought to you in part today by LifeLock Ultimate. You need protection against identity theft. LifeLock Ultimate, the way to go. And on this day after tax day, we all know what a pain it is to fill out our taxes. Imagine out in Seattle, and on a Wednesday morning here from our nation's capital, the Bill Press Show, where we're talking Michael Bloomberg and his latest political venture, not running for office himself again, but leading an effort to build a grassroots organization around the issue of gun safety, ending gun violence. He says he'll put up $50 million of his own money. He's already talked to existing organizations that have agreed to come together under one banner organization, umbrella organization, I should say, Every Town for Gun Safety, and to do what the NRA does, put the fear of God into politicians, members of Congress, members of the state legislatures or city councils, and said you either do the right thing in requiring a background check, that's what they're going to focus on, a background check on every purchase of a firearm, or we're going to boot your ass out of there. 866-55-PRESS. What do you think about it? Rose out in Ligonier, Indiana. Hey, Rose, good morning.
Hi, morning. It was so disappointing after Newtown, and the polls were in the upper 80%, almost near 90%. And the politicians were so deaf that with opinions the way it was, we couldn't even get anything done then. And
remember, Rose, just jumping in, that's when we had that bipartisan Senate bill, right, with
Right.
Pat Toomey and Joe Manchin from West Virginia on the issue of background checks.
Yeah, just simple things. I mean, they were all common sense. We're gun owners, too, because we live in the country. And we support this because you just can't have this going on when you fear your kids even going to school.
Right. No, I mean, I think that, and you touched on something, too. There are a lot of members of the NRA. There are a lot of gun owners, right?
Right.
Just because you own a gun doesn't mean you want every idiot to have a gun and to have the biggest gun or the most dangerous weapons available. Right?
Not 15, 20 rounds and more
crazy.
that you can just go in endlessly and just slaughter. That's all they are is people. It's not hunting.
Right, exactly. So maybe this is what we need, Rose. Let's hope so. Good to hear from you, as always. Up on WNYY in Ithaca, New York, a great little town. I love going up there. Hello, Helen. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning, Mr. Kress.
Bill, please. Yes.
Bill,
we know each other well enough. First name basis.
We met before. Okay. I agree with everything that Rose just said, and I applaud what Bloomberg is doing. But
isn't it? By the way, isn't it nice to see some wealthy person, put his money behind some worthwhile cause? Unlike the Koch brothers, who are putting all this money out there to get rid of the EPA, right, or to push the Keystone Pipeline, or to have more oil and gas drilling in our public lands. Bloomberg's trying to get rid of gun violence. Huh?
That's where those guys are going, I think. But I don't know if I believe in hell. But anyhow, I was thinking of some music themes for you to do with your. Chicago has a song called "Time." Does anybody really know what time it is? Mm-hmm. Or you could do Pink Floyd to play with your problems that you're having with all your.
Oh, I got it. Oh,
very clever.
That is. Yeah. We haven't thought about that ourselves, Peter.
We'll have to work on that.
We'll have to work on that. Maybe by the end of the show, Helen, we'll have a new theme song for the show. Does anybody know what time it is? I don't. I've got 3 different clocks, and they all say different time.
Yeah, exactly. No one knows.
Take your pick. Maybe that's what we ought to just start out and say. It is either boom, boom, or boom.
Yeah.
Right now, on my atomic clock on my laptop, my iPad, 6:38:47. Mary is in Ouray, Colorado. Is that right, Mary?
Colorado, yes, Southwest Colorado.
But Ouray, is that how you pronounce it?
Come here and you'll make many trips. I won't go any further on that.
Okay.
But anyway,
I'm sure anybody visiting Colorado has several trips these days.
Anyway, I support Mr. Bloomberg, and NRA isn't the only thing that the NRA could stand for. I wish Mr. Bloomberg would design or have somebody design some sweatshirts made in America and some T-shirts, and instead of saying NRA, National Rifle Association, it says not representing America.
Yeah, good. I like that.
I think that people would buy them. And the other thing is I get Channel 9 News out of Denver, and I'd like to have them go back just in this year alone and how many of their programs start with a gunshot somewhere, somebody killed. If not with the first story, it's certainly within the next couple minutes.
Yeah.
And I think every city would have that.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that's true across the country, Mary. I mean, I watched the local news in Washington, D.C. last night, and I think the first story was how cold it is.
Yeah, the weather, of
and
course.
The second story was a gun violence story.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not true in the Denver area. It's true in Chicago. It's true here, too. Mary, good to hear from you, or Ray, Colorado, when we do our field trip.
Yeah, let's do it.
Maybe we have to schedule a stop in Ouray.
Hooray.
Yeah, absolutely. But by the way, it's a little tangent here, I know, but what about this weather? I mean, what's going on? Seriously? So here's the story. We had in the Washington suburbs below freezing last night, right?
Yeah.
And
Sleet,
last weekend it was
rain.
80 degrees.
Yeah.
Right?
Days
last
ago.
night we were even told possibility of snow.
Yeah.
Did we get any snow?
There was some snow in the suburbs.
Crazy.
Nothing that really stuck.
And yesterday was all day torrential cold rain.
Yeah. It's one thing to have unseasonably cold weather. It's another to go from, Literally 70 degrees at, 7 a.m., and then back down to 35 degrees at 7 p.m. I mean, you're swinging that dramatically in one day.
We did it yesterday.
That's not right. That's the type of stuff you read about in the book of Revelations.
But
that's not normal.
But that's the kind of winter we had.
Yeah.
Remember this past winter was warm. I wouldn't say it got up to 80. It didn't go but warm, and then the next day we'd have snow.
Crazy cold.
And then the snow would be gone the next day because we'd be back up
right.
In the 50s or 60s or something.
Right.
And so, but I thought once we got through that and into spring, then we would have, we'd be back like on track. And it doesn't look. So what are we going to do? Go through the summer, one day 80, the next day 25?
I know.
I mean, typically we go, from the winter to 3 or 4 days of spring and then right into the summer.
Right.
Here in Washington, D.C. Something has gone wrong because we had our 3 or 4 days of spring and then it went right back to winter. We're supposed to be in summer now, according to how D.C. weather usually goes.
Well, that one day where it got up to 80, what was that? Saturday,
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that was summer.
That was summer. That was our summer. Yeah.
Right.
The clock. It's the clocks. The clocks are all wrong. We think it's the wrong season. Up is down, left is right.
Right. But Bloomberg is right, and Bloomberg is on it. And so I'm glad we talked about this morning. We'll continue to keep in touch with him and that organization. And you ought to look out for it because I'm sure that I'm not sure yet what 15 states have been targeted. But I tell you, my feeling is, tell me where I can sign up. Tell me. I don't care whether they're active in the District of Columbia or not. I want to sign up to help them. I want to send them some money. I want to sign on the dotted line. I want to be one of those new 1 million members they need. I hope you do too. I'm sure they'll have a website up, if not already. Every Town for Gun Safety. That's going to be the new umbrella organization. Let's take on the NRA and let's crush the NRA. David Jackson from the White House for USA Today joins us next.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
President Obama back on the road today out to the Pittsburgh area. Last night, a Seder dinner at the White House. What's up this morning? Let's find out from David Jackson, covers the White House for USA Today, usatoday.com, joining us on our newsline this morning. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Bill.
The briefings for the last 2 days consumed by questions about Ukraine. Still not a lot of options for the U.S., are there, David?
No, not at all. And as you note, that the U.S. has all but ruled out any military action, and they haven't been very fond of even supplying lethal aid to the Ukrainian government. So their options are pretty limited in terms of how to deal with this.
Is there military aid we could provide which is non-lethal? I mean, is there such a thing?
K rations, I guess. No, not really. I don't think it would mean much. But although you're already starting to hear people say maybe we should think about giving weapons to the Ukrainian government, I think that issue may pick up steam. But it's not something the White House, I don't think, wants to hear right now. They still feel like the economic sanctions could have an impact, and they're hoping that it will dissuade Putin from wanting to move further into Ukraine.
Well, when you look at it on the surface, so it's like if in Prince George's County, right, some protesters took over the county administrative building or something, for authorities to move in and kick them out of there would not be considered to be unusual, right?
No, not at all. But I'm sure there's concern that Putin's going to use it as a pretext to try to move in. But no, not. Ukraine's very much within its rights to kick those guys out of those buildings.
But you understand that. If Russia were to move in, then there's going to be a lot of pressure on NATO or the U.S. to respond militarily, and that's the last thing people want.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's hard for me to see any kind of military response from us or even NATO, but I think I can see the possibility that we may supply weapons to them.
Now, what about this latest call between Obama and Putin? When Jay Carney wouldn't tell us exactly how long it lasted, but over an hour, right?
Yeah, I hear it was pretty intense. Yeah, that's what I heard too. Was at least an hour. It took quite some time. I knew it took several hours for the White House to put together its statement about the phone call. Their statement about what happened during that call came several hours after the Kremlin issued its own statement. And as usual, the two statements were completely different. Putin's statement emphasized the fact he denied Obama's assertion that Russia was stirring up trouble in Ukraine, and Putin also said he told Obama to try to talk to the Ukrainian government to try to tamp down the violence. So he kind of turned the tables on the president there. Meanwhile, the White House statement, when it did come out, said that President Obama said that did accuse Russia of fomenting violence in Ukraine and threatened more economic sanctions. So it sounded like a pretty tense conversation.
It's too bad there couldn't have been a pool reporter in the Oval Office to hear one end of that conversation.
Well, wouldn't you love a transcript of that conversation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. By the way, speaking of that, I thought the most interesting exchange yesterday was when Carol Lee was pushing Jay Carney. So at the moment of the first anniversary of the 235 or whatever it was yesterday afternoon, the first anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombing, the president held a moment of silence with his aides in the Oval Office. Why wouldn't the White House allow a pool reporters in for that moment?
I really don't know. I was mystified by that as well. Now, like the White House will tell you that for a solemn ceremony like that, they would want a very small pool, so then you had to pick and choose among who gets in the pool, and that would create friction with the press corps. But I think that's something we'd have worked out in this particular case. I thought it was very strange, but I thought the whole idea of doing the moment of silence in the Oval Office was strange. You know, sometimes in previous instances, they'll go out on the South Lawn and do a short, and I don't understand why they didn't do that in this case, but they didn't.
They could easily have done something in the Rose Garden, right?
Exactly.
Outside, where we're all used to covering stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways they could have done it where they could have paid the respects and then had at least a pool of reporters looking on. Yeah, I thought it was very unusual. And, of course, to top it all off, last night I see they released an official White House photo of the event. And, of course, that angers a lot of our colleagues in the photography business. So, yeah.
Here we go again. The end of last week, David, the White House got some more good news on the Affordable Care Act with the latest CBO report.
Right, very much the CBO report saying that people are signing up, the number of uninsured is going down, and costs appear to be going down too, and a lot of that's attributed to the success they've had signing up people for health insurance policies. There's been a run of good news on Obamacare lately, and I think if you'll notice that, I think you hear a lot more candidates talking about it on the stump. So the feeling in the White House is that the political dynamics of healthcare are changing.
And I saw a story. I think it's in the on the Hill newspaper this morning, front page, that some Republicans are saying to Boehner and Cantor, come on, we have to have something else to put on the table if we're going to continue to talk repeal. We just can't talk repeal. So
very much so. And you see some Republican candidates talking about their own health care ideas. Mm-hmm. So it's going away from just straight repeal to saying repeal and replace, I think, is what is Boehner's turn of phrase. So I think you'll hear some more of that from
What's the president up to today?
It's good. He and Vice President Biden will be together in western Pennsylvania, not far from Pittsburgh. They're going to be visiting a community college. I believe the town is called Oakdale. And they're going to be talking about shifting more money to provide grants to groups that can do new job training programs. The idea here is to try to develop these consortiums where local businesses work with local community colleges to develop specific job training programs for the jobs of today, and also develop apprenticeship programs so that basically students can work with local companies, learn the new skills that are needed for today's jobs, and hopefully help move them into the workplace.
He's got this is not the first one of these he's done, right? I mean, he's got what are they, job centers or?
Exactly. It's very similar to some other proposals. In this particular case, it's using community colleges and having their students become apprentices for local businesses. So it's a little bit different from some of the things they've done in the past, but they are very similar, no doubt.
Yeah.
And of course, that's what the Republicans are going to point out. That we've got all these job training programs. The Republican plan is to try to consolidate these into there's a smaller number of programs, streamline them, and that's going to be their response to what Obama says today.
All right. Well, you got an early start on it this morning, David. Thanks so much for joining us, as always.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. See you a little bit later. Actually, no briefing today, so because the president's on the road. David Jackson, the early bird at the White House for USAtoday.com.
This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Racing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan. Thank you. And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you. Oh, man. Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Okay, should we all change our passwords? We'll find out from Brian Fung of the Washington Post. Top of the next hour, Peter.
TheDailyMeal.com has assembled the 50 best coffee shops in all of America, Bill.
Whoa.
No.
They did the 100 best restaurants not so long ago.
They did indeed.
Right.
So they put together, they talked to baristas and coffee writers around the country, and they put together the list of the 50 best. Number 1 is Everyman Espresso in New York City. Number 2 is Go Get 'Em Tiger in Los Angeles. But number 5, right downstairs, Peregrine Espresso in Washington, D.C. In this building.
In this building.
In this very building.
Oh, my God.
Shout out to Peregrine.
Yeah.
There's nobody there when I walked in this morning.
No, not open yet.
Not open at 5, but they'll be open after the show.
Yes, they will, and probably very crowded.
Are they open now?
They should be.
All right, let's go get a cup.
This is the Bill Press Show.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org. to let us know your thoughts.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I'm a Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governor should come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people have lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got. A lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. Not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself blood pressure or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100 and I'm 81 years old and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for.
I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough. They adapt. But only can do so much when your politicians ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not going to let Detroit be erased, bulldozed to where we're going to fight to the bitter end. Detroit going to survive.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Everybody, great to see you on a Wednesday, April 16. It is the Bill Press Show coming to you live on your local progressive talk radio station. Good to have you with us. Simulcast on Free Speech TV. You know, if you got a satellite dish, you can find us, DirecTV, and also coming to you live on our video stream worldwide at youtube.com/TawkrTV, TawkrTV. How about it? Good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us here as we bring you up to date on the news of the day and, of course, give you a chance to sound off about it. Love to hear from you at 866-55-PRESS. Love to get your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/BillPressShow. Here we go with the team, Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy. Hello, hello.
Hey now.
Hey, good morning.
Alicia Cruz, here about somewhere, ready to take your phone calls at 866-55-PRESS. And Cyprian Balding, videographer here on the job as well, keeping us looking good on the video stream and on Free Speech TV. As we said right there at the very top, sudden rush of cold weather is back. We had enough spring. It's done.
That's
done.
it, huh?
Yeah, we warmed things up just enough for the cherry blossoms to come out and go away, and now we're back to winter.
Oh, the cherry blossoms by now, by the way. Can you imagine?
Yeah, no, done.
Yeah.
Done. Right.
I think we should call it Sprinter, a spring-winter hybrid.
That's about all we had.
Sort of go back and forth.
But this cold wave now has swept into the East Coast here in the Washington, D.C. It's 34 degrees, I just checked, and it was down in the 20s overnight. It's starting to really have an impact on farmers as well up and down the East Coast. Here's one farmer down in Tennessee who says his crops want a little warmer weather.
I've got a sign out there on the road says, if the Lord's willing, we open in the spring. I hope he's willing.
Yeah. Open for spring.
Yeah.
If he's willing.
Lord willing and the creek don't rise.
Right. And in North Carolina, a farmer says, again, it's getting to the point where could be a real serious problem.
But if we start dropping below 30, we're entering a extremely danger zone.
Danger. Well, they got there last night. And even some snow in the remote suburbs of Washington, D.C.
Yeah. I mean, for farmers, man, this is the sweet spot. This is when things start to pop.
Right.
So freezing temperatures are not anything to be taken lightly.
Just continuing the weird weather patterns I think we've seen all year. So coming up, we're going to talk Heartbleed with Brian Fung from the Washington Post right here at the top of the show. Chris Moody from Yahoo News joins us in the next hour as a friend of Bill, where we'll be joined by Joe Romm from the Center for American Progress talking about the United Nations latest report on climate change. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of the stories making news. One Nebraska family had a bit of a scare when they could not find their 3-year-old. They were at Madsen's Bowling and Billiards in Lincoln, Nebraska, and they lost their child. So they looked for him. They couldn't find him. They were afraid that he might have left. They went home to look for the child. They called the police. Hours later...
He was at the bowling alley.
In
the game room.
He had locked himself inside of the arcade claw machine. You know those machines that have the claws that drop down and pick up toys? He wanted to get in there so bad. He literally got inside the little glass cubicle that keeps the toys. They got a photo of the child, which we have tweeted out. If you're following us at BP Show, you can see a picture of the boy. He's safe and sound. Everything's fine. They have him. He was quite happy. He had all the toys he could play with.
Did they use the claws to lift him out?
I'm sorry.
He must have been a little tiny boy.
That's not how they rescued him. That would have made it. That would
served him
The
right.
real
Served him
prize.
right.
You remember right before we got underway with the NCAA basketball tournament, UConn's Shabazz Napier says that some nights he goes to bed hungry, and NCAA players go to bed hungry. The NCAA listened. They are now allowing, they announced yesterday, they are allowing unlimited food supply for Division I sports college athletes. Before it was you got a stipend of 3 meals a day, and now they're saying that's all off the table. We're not going to regulate how much you give it. It's still up to the university how much they give to each student, how much, basically how much they can stock. But there's no longer a limit on how much food they can eat.
All you can eat.
All you can eat, man. Imagine those offensive linemen and football. Yeah, eat up.
Sounds like Denny's on the Sunday morning. Huh?
That's it. And CareerCast is out with its annual ranking of the 10 best and 10 worst jobs for 2014. Let's just run through them. The 10 best jobs: mathematician, university professor, statistician, audiologist, dental hygienist, software engineer, computer systems analyst, occupational therapist, and speech pathologist. All the top 10 best jobs in America.
But based on what?
Well, based on
income,
happiness, income, job security, things like that.
Mathematician happy?
I imagine if you're going to go into that field, you don't just sort of find your way there.
Freaking break. Not one of those appeals to me.
I'm not going to go through all the 10 worst, but I will give you some of them. Lumberjack, taxi driver, newspaper reporter. Sorry to our next guest, Brian Fung. And also broadcaster is also on the list.
Get out.
No way.
No, you got them backwards. I think you got them back.
Maybe.
I think you have them backwards. Or they have them backwards.
Dental hygienist on the good list.
Oh, yeah, right.
The best job.
We could debate that the rest of the day.
Sure.
But, I'll tell you, I have a great respect for newspaper reporters as well as broadcasters.
Damn right.
I have a particularly great respect for newspaper reporters who understand the internet and can explain Heartbleed. Because I don't know what the hell is going on, but I'm afraid of it. And Brian Fung has been writing about it for the Washington Post, a good friend of the program, joining us on our newsline this morning. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, just what is Heartbleed?
Well, Heartbleed, at its very basic level, is a vulnerability in the internet, and it undermines the security.
Is that the same as a virus?
Not necessarily. It's a gap in the code that a lot of programs and software that a lot of websites use to secure the transmissions going from your computer to their servers and back and forth.
Okay, and how is this? Did someone create this, or is it just a flaw in the system, or is this, what I mean? Is this a hacker that's put this out there, or what?
Right, it's mostly a flaw in the system. The people who put this system together are actually volunteers mostly. They work part-time on this system and actually which is used by a wide portion of the internet. So it's kind of amazing that we didn't find out about this sooner. But it's basically a flaw that was unintentionally introduced into the system.
And how does it manifest itself?
Well, for one thing, it allows an attacker to download what's in the memory of a server if the server has the Heartbleed vulnerability in it. And that is to say, if the server is using a security protocol known as OpenSSL. And if the server is using OpenSSL, then a hacker could theoretically download whatever's in the stored memory of the server and potentially get things like passwords and login usernames and even the security certificates that you would need to set up fake websites posing as legitimate ones.
So it's really a security threat, right?
That's right. And a lot of people recommend that you change most of your passwords to protect yourself. Now, it gets a little bit complicated. There are some sites that have already patched their systems, and so you should definitely change your passwords for those, namely Google, Yahoo, Facebook, all the major ones. But there are other sites that may not have updated their systems yet to account for the bug, and so some security researchers are recommending you hold off on replacing those passwords for now.
is this, first of all, something that an individual has to worry about, or just a company?
Well, it happens on two levels. For the passwords, that is something that consumers should be concerned about, and you'll want to change your passwords if the services that you use were affected by Heartbleed, and there are lots of resources online. Just Google, Heartbleed, to find out which sites were affected, and then change your passwords accordingly. Another way that you could sort of take steps to protect yourself would be to turn on two-factor authentication, which, if you're not familiar with that, is a system where after you've logged into a site, the site sends a text message to your phone, which adds another layer of security so that someone else who's trying to hack into your account can't get in.
What was that again?
It's called two-factor authentication. And it's a complicated name for essentially adding a text message layer of security to your account. So you have to have your phone with you in order to log in, and chances are any hacker isn't going to have your phone on them. So that's going to be an extra step to
Two-factor authentication?
That's right.
Oh, Brian, I'm just about ready to throw my computer out the window and just say goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Wow.
And one thing we haven't discussed yet is, this website vulnerability, allowing hackers to steal the security keys and set up those fake imposter website. Basically, what happens there is that when you visit a site like Google, there's a little bit of code that's embedded in the website there that tells your browser, yes, I am Google, you can trust this site. And what Heartbleed allows hackers to do is to hack into a vulnerable site, steal that bit of code, that certificate that says, hey, I am site XYZ, and set up a dummy site that looks and behaves just like the real one. And the fear is that if you are lured into visiting that fake site, you could be tricked into giving up your account credentials or other information.
Oh, man.
And that's not something that consumers really can fix other than by being vigilant about their online security.
Let me ask you a question, Brian. So there are some people who may or may not be in this very room with me right now who are highly skeptical about changing their passwords, who even said that they were not going to change their passwords because of Heartbleed. How?
All right, that's what I said. Okay, I admit it.
Oh, was that you?
Because it's such a pain in the ass. There's so many different sites, so many different passwords. But
my question is, because I've heard from a lot of people that cover this stuff and know this stuff, like you, Brian, who say, I'm not necessarily a person who changes their passwords, on a regular basis, like you may or may not supposed to do. But how concerned should we be, and should we realistically be out there changing all of our passwords?
Well, to the first question, it's a lot easier than you'd think to manage a lot of your passwords. And what a lot of security researchers recommend is that you use a password manager, something like a program called LastPass or a program called 1Password. Basically, these are digital lockers for your passwords. And to get access to those, to all of your passwords, you set one master password. And that might sound a little bit scary. You're saying, what, I should have one password that anyone could potentially hack and then get access to all of my passwords? Well, the answer to that is that most of us use really memorable passwords for all of our sites across the internet, and chances are they don't really vary all that much. So if someone manages to hack your Amazon account, for instance, and you're using that same password for Google, for Yahoo, for Tumblr, for WordPress, then a determined hacker would be able to try that password at all of those different sites and manage to break in. So the suggestion with using these password managers is you use one single password that's very long and very complex, that's very difficult for a hacker to be able to obtain, and then within that digital locker you keep a set of very complicated passwords that you can't remember. The best password is one that you yourself can't remember. And so these programs can create really long strings of passwords for you and then store them and then automatically fill them in for you when you've entered your main or master password.
So LastPass was one of these. What's the other app?
The other one that I recommend is called 1Password, and it's the number 1 and then password.
Whoa.
I know that's true, that the best password is one that you can't remember, but God, that's so, to me anyway, it does sound really daunting. Like, it just seems like such a pain, and it could create more problems.
Well, it certainly adds another level
Yeah.
of difficulty in using the computer, right?
You know, as hard as or complicated as it may be to change your passwords, once to be these really complex strings of letters and numbers, that's nothing compared to the headaches you'll face if your identity is stolen.
All right. Well, so if this is really out there, and this really has this potential for damage to all of our information and security, as you described it, Brian, why aren't we hearing more about it? Why aren't the people, all kinds of people experiencing problems every day and reporting them?
That's a great question, and that has to do with the fact that the attack that Heartbleed allows really isn't all that efficient. So an attacker basically has to download what's in memory a little chunk at a time, and you're not really certain what you're going to get in that little chunk.
Mm-hmm.
And so it could be a part of a password, it could be a part of a security key, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of computing power and a lot of determination, really, to try and steal someone's password that way, when it's much easier often to attack someone and trick them into giving up their credentials just by a simple phishing attack, sending them an email and getting them to click on a link.
All
So Heartbleed, while in theory it's very, very dangerous, and it has a lot of security researchers concerned, the actual threat vector here is not all that efficient.
Got it. All right. Well, good information, really good information, good advice as well, Brian. We will we'll go to work on this, okay? See how we do. If we have any problems, we'll call you back.
All right, you let me know.
All right, you got it. Brian Fung. We'll make him our our high-tech advisor here, right?
Yeah, right.
We need, everybody needs somebody like that.
Our
You can call
technology
on.
czar.
Our technology czar,
Yeah.
Brian Fung from the Washington Post.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full-time. I mean, almost my story. But she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, let me know what you're going to do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory and my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, lawyer? I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure. Up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru, my mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You know you like my cooking? I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity, and one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him, because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Here we go. In the next segment, Marina Koren from the National Journal will be here to bring us up to date on Ukraine. It is now 27 minutes after the hour. Looking at the right clock. Peter, so I just to wrap up, what are you going to do having heard Brian Fung on Heartbleed? Are you going to make any changes?
Well, I've already made some changes. I changed the password for my online banking because that's where, if they're going to hit me, that's where it's going to hurt the most. I haven't changed my Twitter password. Like, if you break into my Twitter account, who cares, frankly? But something like bank account, I think I'm willing to make that change. Yeah.
I think I'm going to ride it out.
Good.
No,
that's fine.
I mean, Brian Fung gave us a lot of good information, but it just seems to me it's too remote that's going to impact my work on the computer.
Best of luck.
So I'm along
Bill
for a
Press
long
Show.
haul here.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say, slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis. Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, "Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but like go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about, you know, your next venture.
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. You know, I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
On a Wednesday morning, 33 minutes after the hour, coming to you live from our nation's capital, it is The Bill Press Show. Good to have you with us this morning. As we bring you up to date on news of the day, we've been talking a lot about things happening here in Washington, D.C., but the focus of policymakers and the administration these days is more and more on what's happening in the Ukraine. Marina Koren is the staff writer for the National Journal, writing about these issues, and joins us in studio again this morning. Hi, Marina. Nice to see you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So what is going on? The last time we talked was about Crimea, and we know that the Russians seemed to manufacture this crisis inside of Crimea. Then they moved in some troops. And the net result is, in effect, Russia has annexed Crimea and there's nothing we can do about it, right?
Right. I mean, at this point, it seems like Crimea was a long time ago when it was really just, barely a month.
Right, exactly. And it's unlikely the status of Crimea is ever going to change.
Right, yeah. It seems that, everyone else has largely just accepted, okay, it's part of Russia now.
Right.
Let's move on.
All right. And then we said at the time, well, we could probably live with that because geographically and historically, Crimea has always been part of Russia, and they've got this big naval base there and everything. So we can live with that as long as Russia doesn't try to gobble up any more of the Ukraine. Right. But it looks like that's what's happening now, correct?
Right, that's true. This looks like the next step that a lot of people said, well, that's where we're going to cross. That's where we're going to draw the line.
Right.
And so in the last few weeks, there have been these pro-Russian separatist groups that have been rising up in as many as 10 cities in eastern Ukraine. And many observers, including the
But
government.
when you say pro-Russian protesters, are they Russians who were shipped in to do this, or are they people who live in Ukraine who are Russian sympathizers, if you will?
Right. Well, at first they were Ukrainians that were, they had an allegiance to Russia, and they felt that this new government in Kiev, it was just placed there, and no one asked for it. They didn't ask for it, so they resembled protesters that you might have seen in Ukraine a few months back. Black jackets, masks. But just this week, we're seeing troops move in, and they don't have
Russian
any signage.
troops.
That's the thing.
I see. Yeah.
It's a similar tactic to what Moscow used in Crimea. There are these tanks rolling in, there are these uniformed soldiers coming in, and they're not saying anything. There's a conspicuous Russian flag floating around them, as there usually is. But there have not been confirmed reports that they are indeed Russian.
And what have they been what have they done so far?
Well, the protesters that they are coming from Ukraine, they're occupying city buildings, they're taking over airports, and the Ukrainian government so far has said, okay, we're giving you 48 hours, we're giving you this many days to pull back, or we're going to use force.
Mm-hmm.
And this week, the Ukrainian government decided to finally start, a military operation to get rid of these protesters.
And yesterday they took back an airport, for example. I mean, they're
right. I mean, the number of airports that have switched control over and over in this conflict is incredible. So there's just this fight on the ground. No shots fired, but there's a lot of occupations of various city buildings.
Right. Now, if you put this in perspective, right, let's take Montgomery County, right, or state of Delaware or something. I mean, their protesters rise up and take over government buildings. It would not be considered unusual or unexpected for the official government to come in and kick them out, right? You mean, so what is the Ukraine government trying to do about this, and what's the response from Moscow?
Well, the Ukrainian government, obviously, their military can't match Russia's.
Yeah.
So they're just pulling in forces from where they can and bringing them into the region and, trying to just force these protesters out without any gunfire because, any escalation is all the pretext that Moscow would need to be, to say that we need to defend the ethnic Russians here and we need to move in. But they don't have the level of special forces. Ukraine doesn't have a level of special forces and intelligence that Russia has. They can't even figure out where these supposed Russian troops are. NATO is using satellite imagery to tell where these helicopters and where these tanks are. So they're fighting back with, what level of military they have, but it's not enough to fight the Moscow special forces.
Right. And Moscow, the New York Times has a piece this morning on the front page where they're playing any effort by the Ukrainian government to enforce the law in Ukraine, as I said, which any legitimate government would do anywhere on the planet, right?
Right.
I mean, if somebody occupied a government building, they'd go in and throw them out. But the Prime Minister Medvedev, right? I can never pronounce his name correctly, who used to be president before Vladimir Putin said, no, I want that post back. He put out a tweet yesterday on his Facebook saying, blood has been spilled in Ukraine again. The threat of civil war looms. So Russia's painting this as basically open warfare, right, against Russia, almost.
Right, and pretext is what Vladimir Putin does best. And so right now, the propaganda that's flowing through, Russian state networks is reaching, it's getting very intense. It's a 24-hour news cycle of Western aggression. There are these terrorists and extremists in Ukraine, and each side is painting the other as a terrorist and extremist. And the government in Kiev is saying that the Russians are tricking Eastern Ukrainians into believing that there are deaths, but there have not been many confirmed reports of actual deaths in the region.
All right, so we got the Russian troops massed at the Ukraine border. Inside the Ukraine, you've got these pro-Russian separatists who have taken over buildings in at least 10 towns. You've got the Ukrainian government, which has now decided, having tried as you pointed out, they gave them a deadline to try to get out. They said, how about if we have a referendum on some autonomy there? Or how about if we bring in UN peacekeeping troops? They tried all these ways of peacefully resolving this. They didn't, so now they're moving in their forces to try to oust them, take these towns back and get these buildings back. Meanwhile, the question is, what can the United States do, or what should we be doing? This question has been raised by almost every reporter who was called on at the briefing for the last 2 days. I've been to both of them, and they're both almost entirely consumed by Ukraine. But Jay Carney is at a loss, really, to come up with anything specific. Here he is, for example, yesterday, once again.
We are evaluating our options and considering quite seriously next steps when it comes to sanctions.
We're evaluating our options. We put sanctions on. They might come up with some more sanctions. But beyond that, what can we do?
Right. The evaluating, Carney's comment, it just shows what the United States and other countries' role has been, and that's just to react. There's no concrete data or strategy that they can study and pinpoint of Moscow's. They just have to see what happens and then react to it and react accordingly with sanctions, with, summit cancellations. So it's not that there's nothing really concrete to analyze. It's more like reading tea leaves about the situation. You just have to wait and see what happens.
But I mean, they've canceled the summit, and they have put certain levels of sanctions on. We've also provided, what was it, $1 billion they agreed this year to,
right.
This week rather. Jack Lew, Treasury Secretary for the Ukrainian the new government of Ukraine. None of that seems to be working. Has not dissuaded the protesters and has not calmed down Russia.
Right. Especially the sanctions against individual Russian officials are not working. You see them on Twitter tweeting about these sanctions and talking about how they're a joke. They're not being taken seriously. They haven't hit Moscow hard. So.
Right. So does the United States, does NATO have any viable options? I mean, is there any alternative to just watching Putin pull the same trick again and end up with some territory in eastern Ukraine?
Right. Well, NATO can have a really large role in this because one of Putin's, greatest fears is a Ukraine under NATO control, a Ukraine under EU and Western control. So, the U.S. can really use NATO to advance, their plan there. And indeed, a few weeks ago, NATO announced that it would boost military support in the Baltics. And the Baltic states are very worried about Moscow actions. I mean, their takeovers and occupation, it's fresh in their minds. And so they're asking NATO for support. But the risk with asking NATO for support and, boosting its role in the region is provoking Moscow and having them fight back.
Yeah, I want to get to Balkans next, but just dealing with, and what is the reluctance on the part of, there's always this feeling that if anything goes wrong anywhere on the planet, the United States has to be the one to step up, right, and move in. Particularly in this case, why does it have to be the United States? And why is there this reluctance on the part of NATO and NATO countries, to take some action?
Right. Well, many NATO members are European countries, and it's the same reason that they've stayed largely quiet, maybe with a few sanctions here and there, because they depend on Russia so heavily economically. Their natural gas exports, their crude oil. And Germany has been, revving up their plan for sanctions. But even then, it's just like you can't, they depend on Russia for these exports, and they can't fight back if Russia can easily cut them off. And Moscow is not afraid to do that. It's already rescinded a gas discount to Ukraine. It could do the same for Europe.
Right. I don't mean to be like a warmonger here, but it seems to me that if NATO's not willing to, the NATO countries, I keep saying companies, NATO countries themselves are not willing to act to protect their own a country in their own backyard, then why should we? I mean, it's a European problem, isn't it?
Right. Well, this is the U.S.
There's a principle involved, which is national sovereignty, and all of that is true. But again, are we the only ones anywhere on the planet that should care about this?
Right. Well, the U.S., this is their, peacekeeper role and promoter of democracy. And this is very much a little bit of a battle of ideals, because Russia doesn't want the Ukraine to embrace the West and Western thinking, but the U.S. would like it to. It would like to promote democracy there. And there are some rumors swirling around that maybe something the U.S. can do is start, providing arms to the Kiev government. But that's still far off, and Congress is in recess for a while. And
well, yeah, what I see is that the idea now, and this was somebody asked about this at the briefing yesterday too, was, okay, we're not going to, Jay Carney said yesterday several times, we see no military solution to this problem, right? I don't think anybody does.
No.
I haven't heard anybody talk about, let's send in the Marines. But then the question is there non-lethal military aid we can provide? What would that be? I don't know that there is such a thing as non-lethal military aid. I guess binoculars or K-rations.
Well, the U.S. has already, in that aid package, they have
Boots.
allocated for ready-to-eat meals, for example. So that would be non-lethal. But, one thing Ukraine is really lacking in right now is intelligence operations, and that's something that the U.S. said it would not provide them with. But, that would be different than, say, weapons, but could go a long way. It seems to me it's an intractable situation. And again, there's a lot at stake on the one hand, there's little at stake on the other hand for the United States. I kind of feel sorry for Jay Carney because they keep pummeling him and about what are you going to do, what are you going to do? And he keeps saying we're evaluating our options. There are not a lot of options on the table. And now the Baltics could be next if we don't act, which complicates it again even further. Marina Koren is here with us from the National Journal trying to sort this all out about the Ukraine. Is it clear to you what we should do? Let's talk about it. 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Not even...
This is the Bill Press Show.
Here we go now, 10 minutes before the top of the hour. In the next hour, Chris Moody is going to be here from Yahoo News as a friend of Bill. And then we'll be talking climate change. Chris Moody and I will be talking climate change with Joe Romm of the Center for American Progress. What to do about the very tense situation in eastern Ukraine is the topic here. Visiting with Marina Koren in studio from the National Journal, and a lot of pressure from Republicans in Congress, a lot of pressure from members of the media on the White House to do more than they've done so far. But President Obama has enacted pretty strong sanctions against Russia to try to dissuade them from taking any more territory of Ukraine, and also to try to get them out of Crimea. But right now, that seems to be the limit of what we can do, or what the White House is willing to do. Is that enough? Marina, before we go back to talking about the Baltics and some of the other former Soviet states, let's say a quick hello to Jonathan here from Lindenwood, New Jersey. What should we be doing, Jonathan? Good morning.
Good morning. I believe that we should basically...
Yes?
I believe that we should basically use intelligence reports. The United States always has secret operations in different places because Vladimir Putin is trying to put back or morph the Soviet Union in another way, and I think that would be a danger.
So, yeah. So you think it is important that we step in?
Yes, I think we should step in, and we should use our secret intelligence to help the Ukrainian people.
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate that. Marina, we probably are, right? I mean, the director of the CIA, John Brennan, was in Kiev over the weekend, right?
Right, yeah.
He didn't go there to see the sights, right?
Exactly, yeah. And Moscow knows he was there, and, they're, in a statement, they said, let's solve this without the involvement of the CIA.
So in terms of intelligence that we could provide to the government of Ukraine, I'd be willing to bet we're already doing that. Wouldn't you? Right?
Right. Well, yeah.
But the question is, do we follow that up with military action that either we take or military assistance we provide the government of Ukraine?
I mean, I think that's still a ways off. We still have to see some kind of military confrontation between Russia and Ukraine for the U.S. to start thinking about supporting Kiev, militarily.
Now, what are the other? Ukraine is just one of the former Soviet republics. Do they feel threatened as well, or do they support this? Because one factor maybe we don't realize is that there are a lot of Russians or Russian-speaking or Russian certainly partisans who live in every one of these republics.
Right, exactly. There are local Russian populations, like you said, in every state. And Russia has used the argument that, it wants to defend these ethnically Russian citizens, and it's using language policy. For example, in Ukraine, children in school, they speak Ukrainian, they learn in Ukrainian, and that's also the case in some of the Baltic states. And Russia has already signaled concern, for example, in Estonia about this Russian policy. So the Baltic states are worried, but there's an interesting spectrum as you move from west to east. Countries like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, they're staying largely silent. They're abstaining from voting on, UN resolutions condemning Russia's annexation because they have such strong cultural and economic ties. It's very different, what the East is thinking, what the West is thinking.
Yeah, and in the Baltics, they're very much afraid that they could be next after Ukraine to see this Russian onslaught. Well, it's tough to sort out, but you help us sort it out as best we can. Thanks so much, Marina, for coming in today.
Thank you for having
me. It's nationaljournal.com, and I'll be back and tell you what's on the president's busy schedule. On the road again today.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I probably would make a time machine.
I would make medicine for the sick.
I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live.
You said 5, right?
5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much. I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter.
I think I'd go looking for aliens.
If I could live an extra 5 years. I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed.
If I had 5 more extra years to live.
I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
Eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas.
I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org. to let us know your thoughts.
And then this afternoon, he is on the road out to Oakdale, Pennsylvania, not far from Pittsburgh. He and the vice president traveling together, and they will be speaking at the Community College of Allegheny County West Hills Center, touring a classroom and talking about the importance of jobs-driven skills training for the 21st century.
This
Back with Chris
is the
Moody,
Bill Press
Yahoo
Show.
News.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governors can come here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people have lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got. A lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. Not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself blood pressure or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I haven't opened the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100 and I'm 81 years old and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for.
I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough. They adapt. But only can do so much when your politicians ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not going to let Detroit be erased, bulldozed, or whatever. We're going to fight to the bitter end. Detroit going to survive.
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, we had our 2 days of spring. Now we're back into winter again here in Washington, D.C. Go figure. 34 degrees and a cold front up and down the East Coast today. Don't know how long this is going to last. Probably 24 hours and we'll be back into spring. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you this morning. How about it? It is Wednesday, April 16. This is the Bill Press Show. We are coming to you live all across this great land of ours on your local progressive talk radio station. How lucky you are if you've got one. And on worldwide on our video stream at youtube.com/TawkrTV, TAWKRTV. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday morning to get a head start on the day. We'll tell you what's going on and you tell us what it all means to you. You can do so by just giving us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Sending us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. The entire team here is here this morning. But first, we start out with a good friend and a guest here as a friend of Bill for the entire hour, Chris Moody from Yahoo News. Hello, Chris.
Good morning, Bill. Great to be back. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me.
Good to have you back. You are sitting in Peter Ogburn's chair. We explained a little earlier, we're sort of limping along with a broken down system today. As you can see, that clock in back of you is nowhere close to being the right
Not
time.
9:27.
It is not 9:27 a.m. So the clocks are wrong. Comcast is down, so we have no computer, and this microphone is dead.
But on the bright side, we don't have to sit with. It only gets to just be you and me here today.
We don't have Peter Ogburn in studio with us yet, so there is a bright side to this. So, watch out! Watch out! He's not far. He's not far away. Okay, so Peter Ogburn is here with Elisa Murphy.
Hey, good
Alicia
morning.
Cruz got the phones covered, and Cyprian Bolding has us looking good on that video stream worldwide. So, Chris, the last time you were in, I was heading for Hawaii. Mm-hmm. You were heading for Machu Picchu.
That's right.
Where I've never been. I want to go. How was it?
Well, it's a stunning place, obviously, the ancient Incan city. But what I found there was that there has been this internet sensation where Westerners, particularly Australians, maybe a few Americans, videotape themselves running naked across the ancient streets of Machu Picchu. And this is a holy site for the Peruvians, for the Incans, and they're kind of fed up with it.
But I'll bet the ancient Peruvians were pretty much naked when they were there.
Well, I don't know. We don't know very much about the Incans, but it's cold up there, so I think they had a fair amount of clothing. Now they're a little fed up with Westerners running across their holy sites, so they have put up these giant signs in front of Machu Picchu that says, "Do not get naked while you're here. Cut it out."
Get out, really?
And, they just put the signs up. They're still fresh, just a couple of weeks ago. They're just sick and tired of it. So don't get naked at other people's holy sites.
They have the same signs at the Vatican.
They do.
Didn't you know that?
I
Yeah,
did not know that.
Yeah, because all these Westerners were coming through St. Peter's Square. They were.
I mean, who among us hasn't streaked across the Vatican or run cattle through the Vatican? I mean, we've all done that too.
But Machu Picchu, worth seeing, and it was
absolutely. It's a marvelous place. And then we were down in Chile for a while, where they had the earthquake, as they do in Chile.
Good.
And now part of it is on fire. So I left the country in good shape. I think.
Yeah, a little more exciting than my trip to Hawaii. And I also noticed that you have your juice mug with you this morning.
I do. Today is
Chris Moody, known for never leaving home without mixing all the vegetables in his refrigerator into some kind of a god-awful juice.
It's delicious, Bill. You got to try it. Swiss chard beets, apple, and carrots. Breakfast of champions.
Swiss chard beets, apple, and carrot.
Mm-hmm. Can't start the day without
Brave
it.
soul.
I'll take the apple juice. But so I don't know whether you celebrated yesterday. I sure did. Yesterday was the big anniversary, the 60th anniversary of the birth of the Mustang.
Wow.
Here's the Vice President, Joe Heinrich of Ford Motor Company, talking about what an event that was in American history.
In 1964, here comes the Ford Mustang. It really changed everything. An affordable sports car from Ford Motor Company with great styling, but a price that was attainable for the middle class.
It really did revolutionize
car.
America. Yeah, what a great car. I have to tell you, my midlife crisis was buying a Mustang.
What year?
Frankly, I forget. I was living in Los Angeles doing radio, TV in L.A., and I bought a black Mustang convertible.
Wow. Stick or automatic?
Oh, stick, of course.
Thank you. Okay, all right.
No. But it was great. A great car. I loved it. And I living in West Hollywood and in L.A., put the top down, put Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, on the, put the CD in, blast that baby out, and just drive around with that top
across
down.
The cliffs and everything.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Love that car. Wish I still had it. So Chris is here for the whole hour as a friend of Bill, and then Joe Romm will be talking to about this important United Nations report on climate change coming up. And let's get right into the news of the day, because you came back from Machu Picchu and went to New Hampshire last weekend. Big political weekend in New Hampshire. The Freedom Summit was happening, and Scott Brown announced that he was running for the Senate. Where do we start?
Let's start with Scott Brown.
All right,
what do you
Scott
say?
Brown.
So Scott Brown, as we know,
Carpetbagger.
Right, carpetbagger walking across the invisible line to Massachusetts. He was the Massachusetts senator. He's trying to recreate himself for New Hampshire, which is a far less liberal state than Massachusetts. And he took a pretty moderate line as a Republican, crossing over the aisle several times, but then got booted out by Elizabeth Warren. And so now he's back and trying to recreate himself. Now he's got a familiar team, Eric Fernstrom, who ran his campaign and Romney's in 2012, a number of Romney hands. Chris Christie aide is working on his campaign as well, and some people from Kelly Ayotte's team. So you have got the conservative senator kind of helping him out as well a little bit.
But here's what it's obvious to the whole world, and it's got to be obvious to the people of New Hampshire, that he doesn't come from New Hampshire. I mean, this is just a blatant attempt to he's so hungry to get back in the United States Senate. He knows he can't hack it from Massachusetts, so he's going to some place where he thinks he can hack it.
That's
people
true.
Really put up with this?
I would say his carpetbagging's not nearly as ridiculous as an Arkansan in a Yankees cap. It's not nearly as far as Hillary going to New York.
But
however,
it's not his state.
No, it's not his state. But here's the fun part. So I was at his Senate rally where he announces, and former Governor Sununu is the attack dog for him, just as he was for Romm. And he gets up there.
Oh, really? So John Sununu is supporting
absolutely
Scott Brown.
He had introduced him in his speech.
Did he really? Oh.
And Sununu gets up there and he says, Scott Brown is virtually from the state of New Hampshire. And virtually? It means he's from Maine. He was born in Maine, almost like on the border. I mean, it's very close, but it was Maine. It was Maine.
I was going to say.
And so then he starts saying, actually, Jeanne Shaheen is like the third senator from Massachusetts because of her liberal record. Now, this is kind of a risky strategy.
She's former governor of New Hampshire.
She's been there for decades. She has roots. And Sununu said, did you know Shaheen was born in Missouri? And Scott Brown was born virtually in the state of New Hampshire. Right.
Yeah.
Now, this is very risky because, as you know, Scott Brown very much was a senator from Massachusetts and really wanted to remain one. This is option B.
Right.
So I think they should probably cut their losses on that one, perhaps not talk about Shaheen being the third senator from Massachusetts, right? But they see a path to victory here. He's got the star power. The voters in New Hampshire there are fewer Democrats, a lot more independents, and they say if Scott Brown can win the same amount of independents that he did in Massachusetts, he can possibly win in New Hampshire.
Is he back with the red pickup truck?
He's got the red pickup truck, and he just got his new license plates that say "Live Free or Die."
Live Free or Die.
And he's very, very happy about that.
Yeah, so. I just think. I would hope the people of New Hampshire are smarter than to fall for this con job. I mean, it's clear again what he's trying to. He's using the people of New Hampshire to try to get back to the United States after losing to Elizabeth Warren, right? So
right.
I mean, why should they give him a second shot again in a different state? So he may have had a vacation home there. So did Mitt Romney. Doesn't mean he was resident of New Hampshire.
Well, this is going to be a single note campaign, all going to be about the Affordable Care Act. And they'll bring out the people that maybe lost their original insurance that can get new insurance under Obamacare. Shaheen came in 2008 on the Obama wave and voted for the law and has supported it. Now, the Democrats, I met with them as well while I was there. Their response is going to be, all right, you want to take away 100,000 people's health care by repealing the Affordable Care Act? Because while the Affordable Care Act isn't as necessarily popular quite yet, repealing it is not popular either. There's some kind of middle ground that I think a lot of people are looking for. So Scott Brown wants to repeal it, and that's where the Democrats are going to attack.
I want to come back to Affordable Care Act in just a second and its viability as an issue in the midterm elections. But tell us about the Freedom Summit. So this is the Koch brothers primary, right? I mean,
in a way, it really is. It's the activists for a group called Americans for Prosperity, which has spent millions of dollars over the past several years running ads across the country, and its chairman is David Koch. And they joined with a group that will sound very familiar, Citizens United, together as all liberal heads explode, Koch brothers, Citizens United, kaboom, right?
God, can you imagine? Right.
For those reading, Bill's head did just explode, or for those listening on the radio. So they have this about 900 people or so get together in this meeting hall in Manchester, and it's kind of a cattle call for possible Republican presidential candidates. You're talking Ted Cruz, Rand Paul. Some people laugh, but maybe even Mike Huckabee. He spoke as well.
Yeah, he was there.
Yeah,
right?
no, but some people aren't sure if he's going to run, and I'm not sure if he's sure quite yet. But you want to keep an eye on him just the same. And they are, whether they'll say it or admit it or not, are kicking the tires of the live free or die state and giving it a feel. Rand Paul's pretty open about it. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking of running. What? And then Ted Cruz will say, well, I just love America and puppies, or something like that when you ask him if he's running. Ted Cruz talks that way. But he's kicking those tires.
I would think that New Hampshire would be, with so many independents and with so much independence among their voters, that Rand Paul would have a certain appeal in New Hampshire. How was he received?
Oh, very well. Now, this Koch conference was a microcosm, a very conservative microcosm of New Hampshire voters. This is not a good sample of all of them. As we know, New Hampshire is a place where the moderates really can get a leg up. So Ted Cruz might do exceptionally well among Iowa conservatives, among evangelicals, but he's going to have to find a way to reach a broader swath of Republican voters because they're not all Tea Partiers. A lot of them are, but not all of them. So in New Hampshire, Rand Paul really could have an opening. Right now, as it stands, a couple years beforehand, but right now it looks like it could be a Christie-Paul matchup in New Hampshire. Chris Christie already has some of his people up there right now. The executive director of the New Hampshire GOP is a former Christie aide, as well as Colin Reed, the
Christie did not show up for the Freedom Summit.
He was not there, no. But his people are there. The Scott Brown aide is a former Christie guy as well. So the chess pieces are slowly being put into place, but the queens or the principals are like Chris Christie is not necessarily coming in quite yet.
The one soundbite that I saw from Rand Paul in New Hampshire was he was talking about cell phones again. It was basically the same line he used at UC Berkeley a couple of weeks ago. Is the NSA is tapping your cell phones, and it's none of their damn business what you're talking about on your cell phone or something.
Now, so Rand Paul
again in New Hampshire, it would seem to me that'd be
huge,
the great issue for him.
Rand Paul knows that, and the Republicans know that they've got a problem with single women, with young voters, and minority voters. And Rand Paul looks at this NSA spying and he says, bingo, that is a place that we can really speak to young people, where Rand Paul, conservative, libertarian, Republican, can go to Berkeley and people will listen and they will cheer me. And that maybe then is our opening to talk to young people. And Rand Paul's also doing work on the drug war and minimum sentencing for drug offenses. And he says that's where we can start talking to African Americans. They're not going to just listen to us if we walk in and say, let's lower our taxes for rich people. Not going to work. This is where the opening. And so he first, before he can really convince those people, he has to convince his own party that this is a viable strategy, and he's working on that now just as hard as he's working on reaching young people and minorities.
If he is working on it, that really sets him working on identifying with members of his own party. That sets him apart from his father, doesn't it?
Well, I think so.
I mean, Ron Paul didn't give a damn about his own
really
party.
well said. No, he didn't. And I think, as we saw in Rand Paul's Kentucky Senate race and him working with Mitch McConnell, he's more of an operator, I suppose. He's more palatable to a larger group of people, I think. And Ron Paul has some very passionate fans. We know that. They love him. But Rand Paul wants to be able to reach out to a wider group. And as he'll tell you, he's not his father. They split on a couple of issues. But the apple falls not entirely far from the tree here.
Yeah. And he does have that certain appeal, which Ron Paul did to young people as well.
And if we're talking about reaching independence in a state like New Hampshire, Rand Paul's making a play for them.
Chris Moody, right in the middle of it in New Hampshire with Scott Brown and with the Freedom Summit. 866-55-PRESS is our toll-free number. We'll continue our conversation on the other side, and we do want to talk about the Affordable Care Act with more people signing up and news that is going to cost less than people had predicted. Is this still going to be a hot issue and a winning issue for Republicans? The Bill Press Show. More coming up. Stay tuned.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Aww. You should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork. Loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your
likes
kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
is the Bill Press Show.
26 minutes after the hour, Chris Moody is here in studio as a friend of Bill for this hour. And in the next segment, we'll be talking with Joe Romm, who is the expert on climate change at the Center for American Progress, getting his take on the latest UN report, Chris, which warns us that the time is running out to take action if we're really going to reverse the trend on climate change. This is probably the most far-reaching and the most serious report that we've seen so far on climate change, one of many, and Joe Romm will be here to talk to us all about it. Right now, you and I are talking about the political climate here in this country. So let me just about a minute left. Do you think Obamacare? We saw last week the CBO reported there are going to be more people sign up for Obamacare than they thought, and it's going to cost less than they thought. So there's more and more good news about Obamacare. Does that take some of the wind out of the sails of Republicans?
It might be too little too late for 2014, but I think if they cannot screw up more implementation and they can push this thing through clear, they could be okay for 2016 and beyond. The Republicans, I think, are in pretty good shape to make this a contentious issue now, but it's yet to be seen whether it's going to carry them on. They're going to have to become more of a single issue party, just repeal. They'll have to find something different.
But that's it. But it's repeal, but they've given up on replace.
The House has yet to vote on another replacement, and Eric Cantor needs to get on it and find something. The question is, what can he get his caucus to vote for?
So that
very difficult for
that old question: can you beat something with nothing? I guess we'll find out.
Maybe for a short while.
Is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
Eye cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the area.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
At 33 minutes after the hour on a Wednesday, April 16, The Bill Press Show, live on your local progressive talk radio station and on our video stream worldwide at TawkrTV, TAWKR-TV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. Here in studio with us in our nation's capital, on Capitol Hill, I meant to say, is Chris Moody, who covers all things Washington for Yahoo News. Chris, good to have you here again.
Great to be here. Thank you.
We are joined now by a very important report came out last week from the United Nations and their Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Probably the most far-reaching, the most serious report on climate change that we've seen so far. Joe Romm, a good friend of the program, is the climate progress editor at the Center for American Progress here in Washington, D.C., joining us on our news line this morning. Hi, Joe. Good morning. Good to have you back on the program.
Hi, Bill. Thanks for having me.
What did we learn new from this UN report?
Well, this is the third of 4 reports that the UN puts out every several years. This is a summary of all the scientific literature, and this third report was on how much it costs to cut carbon pollution, to reduce greenhouse gases and avoid catastrophic climate change. And, you know, I think the main point here is that taking action is quite cheap, quite low cost relative to the cost of doing nothing. And the other key point is that if we delay another 10 years or so, it's going to become incredibly expensive, and we may not be able to avoid some pretty serious impacts.
Is the burden on the United States?
Well, you know, we are the number 2 polluter, and cumulative emissions, obviously the rich countries are responsible for the vast majority, and we're rich, you know, so obviously I think if the richest country in the world, which is responsible for the most cumulative carbon pollution, won't take action, then it sends, you know, kind of a signal to the rest of the world that they don't have to act.
You say we're number 2. I thought we were number 1.
We were number 1, but China has been going gangbusters building coal plants, and they passed us a few years ago. And you know, again, because the United States never took leadership years ago, we basically sent a signal to the rest of the world: hey, just, you know, keep doing what you're doing. So right now, China has 50% more total emissions than we do. So yeah, they now, you know, their per capita emissions are still considerably lower because they have over 3 times our population. But yeah, China has taken over the number 1 spot.
Joe, this is Chris Moody from Yahoo News. You said we need to take action. Can you put together a couple bullet points for us? What does that mean? What does Congress or the administration? What do you suggest they do concretely in the next year or as soon as possible?
Well, you know, we could divide that into what they should do.
What they should do, not could. That's very different.
I mean, number 1, carbon pollution harms humans. It makes droughts worse. It makes heat waves worse. It raises sea levels. It makes the Hurricane Sandy storm surge worse. So you have to put a price on carbon. If you don't put a price on carbon pollution, then the world is going to keep treating the atmosphere like an open sewer and just dumping unlimited amounts of carbon pollution into it. And the IPCC pretty much makes clear that the most economical and cost-effective strategy for dealing with global warming would be to set a price on carbon pollution and then let the market choose which were the best technologies to deal with.
And that's
now,
a cap and trade kind of plan?
It could be cap and trade. It could be a tax. You know, Bob Inglis, the former Republican, pushes a revenue neutral tax where the money you take in, you return to businesses and the American people. You can certainly do it in a way that does not have a significant economic impact on people and businesses. I think that, clearly this Congress is not, going to be poised to do that anytime soon, and that leaves things in the hands of President Obama, and fortunately he has a fair amount of authority to take some action.
Well, what the administration is saying, as I understand, and there was a front-page story in the New York Times on this yesterday, that the politics of climate change are running head-to-head against this UN report demanding change, and you don't see that willingness to change here in Congress. So the president is focusing on new regulations from EPA on new power plants in this country. We're not building any more new coal plants here, correct, Joe? And
we're not building very many new coal plants in this country. That is true, and in part because of the low price of natural gas, and in part because solar and particularly wind have come down so sharply in price, and also because energy efficiency has reduced demand growth.
All right. So can they do the job with by executive order with regulations on existing coal plants?
Yeah, the regulations you're talking about are the Clean Air Act regulations, and in fact, the Supreme Court said that the EPA has to issue these regulations. They are, as you say, the most important ones are on existing coal plants because we're not really building very many new coal plants. So, the Obama administration has said that in the coming months they will issue these standards, which will help reduce carbon pollution from the electric utility sector, which is the biggest sector that causes carbon pollution, and the biggest source, of course, would be the coal-fired power plants.
Yeah, I guess, Chris, the question is, how big a political issue is this? I mean, do the American people really get it and really care and are really pushing for action?
I would say in the year 2003, climate change was huge on people's minds and people were really talking about it. But if you look at polling data right now, it is near the bottom when people are really talking about as far as the national conversation. And to get anything big done in Washington, you need people to really care, to be calling their members of Congress, to be urging them to act. And I can't imagine that lawmakers are getting a lot of letters and phone calls on issues like this.
What's your take on that, Joe?
Well, I think that it's if you look at social science, it's kind of a vicious circle because the public takes issues seriously, gets concerned about issues that their politicians are concerned about. So, if you have an issue where the media coverage has collapsed and, members of the political parties don't talk about it, why would anyone in the public think that it's urgent? Now, I will say, and Bill, you may have seen this, I'm chief science advisor for this new TV series on Showtime at 10 o'clock at nights, The Years of Living Dangerously, and it has gotten very good reviews, and it involves James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Harrison Ford, and leading journalists like Leslie Stahl and Tom Friedman. We are hoping to I think start what is a new conversation on climate change, and in part, I think the extreme weather of the last 2 or 3 years, and Superstorm Sandy has definitely, re-sparked concern again. So I am hopeful that that people are, getting more politically active. And as you know better than anybody, it's really whether there is a 5 or 10% pool of Americans who are very concerned, who become single-issue voters, as some other issues, AARP and the NRA and the Tea Party have shown that a small group of very committed people can have a disproportionate impact.
So, is there a climate super PAC?
Well, as you know, there are starting to be progressive donors who are putting real money into pushing climate as an issue.
Right.
And I think that it is viewed as having helped with Ed Markey in the Massachusetts Senate race. It is viewed as perhaps helping a tipping point in the Virginia governor's race, and I think you're going to see it actively in this congressional cycle.
Tom Steyer is one man from California who's put a lot of his own personal wealth into this issue, and will be, I'm sure, be doing more. We talked earlier this morning about Michael Bloomberg just put up $50 million yesterday to build a grassroots constituency around sensible gun control measures. So we need somebody who's going to put up $55 million to build a grassroots constituency on climate change, Joe. But to look for that guy.
Did you see the Bloomberg quote?
Because the Koch brothers, by the way, all their money's against climate, doing anything on climate, on the other side.
With the Koch brothers, they've set up a network of hundreds of donors that give big money, and they have these conventions where they all put their money in together. Bill, you'd know this much better than I. Is there something like that on the left where the biggest liberal donors meet together and they say, you fund this, you fund this, and groups bid for the money?
Alas.
Where's the Koch brothers on the left? Matt Bai at Yahoo News actually had a story about this and just said, look how good the Kochs are at organizing. Because it's not just from the Koch's pocket. It's because they are basically bundlers.
I put those people together and put Joe Romm in front of them, and we'd be in business. Joe, final question is this report also warned about the impact of climate. We're already seeing the impact of climate change in terms of particularly rising sea levels, aren't we?
Yeah, this report said that climate change is right here, right now. It's not some distant threat that's going to affect other people. It's affecting people on every continent. The second of the reports, which was on impacts, warned that we are facing, quote, the breakdown of food systems and more violent conflict as a result of, getting more droughts and more dust bowls. And of course, we're adding 2 billion people over the next 4 decades, just as we are, going to have more water scarcity and less arable land.
Boy, it is real. It is here, and we got to do something about it. Joe Romm, you've been leader on the case for a long time, and we thank you again for joining us this morning. You can follow Joe at Think Progress, thinkprogress.org/climate. Thanks, Joe. Good to talk to you again.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
Chris Moody is here. Chris, we'll sort this whole out politically.
We'll fix all the problems
here. Why aren't people more upset about this issue? What are you going to do? Wait until we lose Miami and then get upset? 866-55-PRESS. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown.
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday.
It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Here we are now at 12 minutes before the top of the hour. Chris Moody here from Yahoo News. Covers politics for Yahoo News. In studio with us. I know you want to interview James Inhofe.
I do, yes.
The transition here is from talking about climate change with Joe Romm at the Center for American Progress, who's really an apostle on this issue, right? He's been out there talking about it before anybody would take it seriously. He was for climate change before Al Gore was, right? And then the other extreme, you've got Jim Inhofe from Oklahoma, who is a climate change denier still.
He's one of the leading skeptics in the Senate, for sure. Yeah.
And what baffles me is that the deniers are winning the day still by able to prevent. That's what this New York Times article was yesterday. Despite the mountains of evidence that we are on the way to destroying this planet, the climate change deniers have been able to succeed in blocking any progress in the United States Congress.
A couple reasons for that.
Why?
Okay. One, obviously getting anything done big in Washington takes a lot of political movement. It takes a lot of people writing their congressmen and telling them this is an important issue. That's what moves lawmakers, right? Number two, the forces against climate change are mostly industry. Industry creates the capital, has the most money, donates to the lawmakers, and is far better organized, I think, than private citizens. And so the amount of voices that get to them and the amount of money, a lot of it comes from the industry side that has more money to advertise and everything. And so it does make it very difficult to create change on any level. That's just the harsh political reality of things.
It is, and good to be reminded of it. But and on the second point, on the industry, again, we mentioned them in the last segment, it's worth noting that the Koch brothers' entire agenda, I mean, whatever and they have multiple organizations. In the book that I wrote about the Koch brothers, The Obama Hate Machine, I identified 57 different organizations that they fund. But Americans for Prosperity is their political arm.
That's
right?
the main 501c4 that does a
Right.
lot of the advocacy.
But no matter what it sounds like, their real agenda is to do whatever they can for the fossil fuel industry. That's their lifeblood. That's their life. That's their industry. And so it's Keystone Pipeline, for it and against EPA. They don't want to shut down the EPA or block any effort to put any more regulations on the fossil fuel
they're certainly
industry.
not single issue a group. I mean, they fund a lot of different groups that do different work, a lot of progressive ideas that people would agree with on the left. But you're right, they do a lot of stuff on fossil fuels, and right now they've been doing most of their work. If you look actually right now at most of the Koch network's advocacy, it's one issue. It's Obamacare, whether that's their Hispanic groups, their youth groups. I mean, it's that, and that'll change over time. But that right now, Obamacare is what they're focused on.
I think they focus on You're right. I think they focus on Obamacare because the same people who would support Obamacare would also support doing something about climate change, and so it's a twofer for them, right?
Possibly, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know when that politics is going to swing around, and whether or as we also touched on, whether progressives will see the need to band together and to form a counter block, if you will, from
I'd
the
be
left
fascinated to
see
the
Koch brothers,
to see a conglomerate of donors getting together and funding different organizations or launching. You know, the Koch brothers started this network, right? And they have this bank called Freedom Partners that disperses a lot of the money to these other groups in the network, from far-flung groups to the ones that are closer to the nucleus. I mean, I'd be fascinated to see something like that on the left, and I'm frankly surprised that it hasn't organized in that way.
Well, maybe
the left is supposed to be the ones that are good at organizing. What's going on with you guys?
Maybe we saw the beginning of that yesterday with Michael Bloomberg saying,
well, the money's starting to flow in. Sure.
50 million on gun control only. So if we could get a Bloomberg on guns and maybe a Tom Steyer on climate change and some others on different issues,
you need more than just
put them together.
Right, but you need somebody to lead that group, and that's the role the Kochs play. So Bloomberg's just one guy. Is Bloomberg going to take a leading role, hold a convention at a fancy hotel somewhere, bring them all in, and have them bid on donating?
Let me put it this way: he's the only guy I know who could match dollar for dollar the Koch brothers. So. Michael Bloomberg, I guess we've decided today you got a big job ahead of you. Chris Moody, good to see you, my friend.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Come back often. Chris Moody from Yahoo News. I'll be back with today's parting shot.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment, and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, you know, yesterday was tax day, and everybody complains about having to pay their taxes. Everybody that is, except me. Here's the way I see it. Taxes are the price we pay for civilization. All those services we depend on to enable us to live happily together in relative safety and harmony. And for us Americans in particular, taxes are the price we pay to live in such a wonderful country with our great military, highways, airports, monuments, and national parks. You can't really expect to get all of that for nothing, and we don't. That's why we pay taxes. And I'm happy to pay taxes as long as everybody is paying their fair share in taxes. That's my rub. I hate the fact that you and I pay taxes, but most oil companies don't. So yes, I have a big smile on my face when I pay my taxes. I'd have a bigger smile on my face if I knew everybody else was paying their fair share. Have a great day, folks. See you back here again.
Bill Press Show
tomorrow morning.